Hello, everybody, and welcome to a series that's probably going to be split into a lot of parts. I don't actually know how many parts it's going to be split into because I'm going to be honest, when it comes to doing Iceberg videos, usually there's a lot more per tier. And so when you do that, you kind of want to split it into more videos so that way you can cover every single topic and you can cover it more in depth. However, with this, as you can kind of see here, there's not very many things on each tier, especially when you get more to the bottom ones. But aside from that, I'm still going to try to make each tier its own video. Depending on how this goes, I'm probably going to either keep it uploaded on my main channel, or I'm going to upload the first one here on this channel and then upload the rest of them onto my other channel. Because I'm going to be honest, this isn't my normal content. And I'm pretty sure many people already can tell this isn't my normal content that would be here on YouTube. Yeah. And the only reason that I'm really doing this is because I know it's a weird thing to say, but I enjoy World War II. I enjoy a lot of the history and a lot of the mystery about World War II because there's a lot of things, and we'll get into them in this Iceberg, which is the reason why I'm doing it. So yeah, that's kind of the reason why I'm doing this. A lot of these aren't mysteries, they're more obscurities, like things you wouldn't learn in history class. But enough with the whole introductions. I think it's time we kind of go ahead and just get right into it. So the first one on tier 1 is MIA soldiers, which at first I was like, oh, that's kind of vague, but I did a little bit of research and it was actually pretty easy to research and kind of come up with an answer for this one. And it's the fact that after World War II, and honestly, ever since World War II, so for the last 76 years, there have been over 75,000 missing soldiers from the US. And there's probably a lot more amongst every other, country that was involved within World War II. However, I guess the US just has way more MIA soldiers. Now, a lot of this is would kind of seem like, oh, well, the main reason that there's a lot of missing soldiers is because a lot of the fights were on sea and in air, so trying to find bodies at the bottom of the sea isn't really all that easy. So yeah, if you go and look at the list for all of the MIA soldiers from the US, you will see that 90% of them are Navy. So go fucking figure. Recently, though, within I think it might have been this year. I don't remember exactly. Recently, as of April of 2021, the DPAA, which is the Department POW. Let me look that up so I'm getting this correct. Yeah. So the Defense POW/MIA Accounting Agency. Love how there are two acronyms within this acronym. That's really fun. Anyways, they recently discovered the body of somebody who lost in a dogfight in Austria. So yeah, 77 years later, people are still looking for a lot of MIA soldiers. So I don't really know why that's, I think that's more of an obscurity than it is a mystery. And yeah. Now, this one I feel like a lot of people have probably already heard about at least once or twice. And that's that the Germans, or the Nazis, fled to Argentina after the end of World War II, or likely after the death of Adolf Hitler, or the supposed death of Adolf Hitler. And this one kind of stems from something that's actually pretty true. So this is less of a mystery, more of an obscurity once again. But after World War II, a lot of Nazis actually were welcomed in Argentina because I guess Argentina also just so happened to hate a certain type of people that the Germans also seem to have a hatred for. Anyways, despite their war crimes and all of the horrible things that they committed, the Germans were welcomed with open arms in Argentina, and the Argentinian president had actually made it a declaration for the for the protection of Nazis within Argentina. So South America kind of pretty much just became a safe haven for the Nazis, which is funny because now they're a safe haven for literally nobody, especially in Brazil. A German SS officer had actually kind of snitched to the FBI about other Nazis fleeing to Argentina. And so because of this, the FBI investigated Argentina to find a bunch of Nazis. Really fucking interesting story, I'm gonna be honest. I think it's kind of weird having the FBI, of all people, go and search for Nazis. Anyways, but aside from the Nazis themselves fleeing to Argentina, there is a conspiracy that not only the Nazis themselves fled to Argentina, but Hitler himself fled to Argentina and didn't actually die. Look, I'm going to be honest. Okay, did anybody actually see Hitler's body? Has anybody seen Hitler's body since? I'm just saying. It's possible. It is possible Hitler also fled to Argentina. And look, if he was, kind of accepted in Argentina and he had a safe haven there, why wouldn't he? Anyways, moving on from a conspiracy, let's move on to the next topic. Okay. Die Glocke, or Die Glocke, or the bell, which is the literal translation, is essentially, well, have you ever played Call of Duty Zombies? You ever see the teleportation device? You know how it's kind of like in a bell shape, that's essentially what it was that they were working on. Like, it looked exactly like that with the Nazi symbol and everything. Like, there's a picture next to my face of what it looks like, and like you can see what it is I'm talking about, right? I'm not crazy, right? Anyways, essentially, Die Glocke was it was a Wunderwaffe, which is a wonder weapon. It was rumored that it was the Nazis testing teleportation or anti-gravity machine. One of the two. My favorite part about this, by the way, is there's the, as I like to call it, the Nazi Stonehenge, and I believe it's either Poland or Germany, or maybe it's in Austria. I'm not really sure. And people believe that that was the launch or landing pad for the bell. I mean, to be fair, why the fuck would the Nazis just go and make their own little Stonehenge? It doesn't even look like a Stonehenge. It just looks like a weird fucking archway. I'm not sure. I'm not some kind of fucking artist, okay? Like, but that doesn't really look like it's the Nazi Stonehenge. Moving on. So if that wasn't like, a little bit conspiracy theory-ish, this next one isn't any more or any less, really. It's actually pretty fucking stupid. The Nazi gold train. So essentially, after World War II, the Nazis, I guess, were like, well, we need a lot of money, or something like that. And they decided that they were going to put onto a train 300 tons of gold, which, if you don't know how much 300 tons is in money, it's a fucking lot. So, yeah, the Nazis had that much amount of that much money, that much gold, and they put it on a train and they shipped it off to, I guess, somewhere in Poland or something, pretty much in Wrocław, Poland. It suddenly disappeared. So yeah, this 300 tons of gold in a train suddenly disappeared into the railway station or some shit. And for the last 77 years, it's been buried underground. And nobody's been able to find it. It's just poof, completely gone. So yeah, honestly, I don't think the Nazi gold train existed at all. This is one of the mysteries, or maybe it's one of the obscurities, but I'm pretty sure it's one of the mysteries. And there's a team of people, 2 people, who have pretty much told the Polish government, hey, give us funds. We're going to go try and find this 300-ton thing of gold, missing train, whatever. And they've been going at it for years, and they have not found anything. I don't really remember how long they've been going at it for. This is how long they've been going at it for. Yeah. No surprise they haven't fucking found anything. Honestly. moving on. This is kind of where the iceberg goes from haha funnies, like the last couple of them, to all right, it's serious time. Unit 731 is what I would deem the worst atrocity committed by the Japanese, which there are quite a few of. I know we all hear about how bad the Germans were during World War II, but believe it or not, the Japanese were pretty fucking terrible. Honestly, I think everybody on the Axis powers, except for Italy, no surprise there, was pretty bad. But I still want to visit Japan, so anyways, Unit 731. I'm going to have to put a warning right here. And I'm going to have to say that if you have a weak stomach and if you don't really like hearing about I'm trying to like dance around it as best as I can. This is not the part for you, and you're probably going to want to go ahead and click away now, or you're going to want to skip to the next part. Or really, there's timestamps below for each chapter of this video. You're just going to have to skip if you don't want to hear about not only sexual assault, but also some of, like I said, the worst atrocities committed on people, human beings. Unit 731 was a covert biological and chemical warfare research and development unit of the Imperial Japanese Army that engaged in lethal human experimentation, of which, and I had to have my phone for this because there's a lot that they did. So let's go down this list of what they did, shall we? The experiments would be performed on men, women, children, and even infants. They were subjected to vivisection, which would be performed without anesthesia and would usually be lethal. They'd perform on anyone from pregnant women to infants. Prisoners would have limbs amputated in order to study blood loss. They'd be deprived of food and water to determine the length of time until death. They'd be placed into low-pressure chambers until their eyes popped from their sockets, experimented upon to determine the relationship between temperature, burns, and human survival, hung upside down until death, crushed with heavy objects, electrocuted, dehydrated with hot fans, placed into centrifuges and spun until death, injected with animal blood. Notably, they do this with horse blood. Exposed to lethal doses of X-rays, subjected to various chemical weapons inside gas chambers, injected with seawater, and burned or buried alive. They'd even be exposed to, it's really hard to get this one, but I'm gonna try. They'd even be exposed to tetrodotoxin, which is the venom that is found inside of fugu or pufferfish. They'd be exposed to heroin, Korean bindweed, Bactol, and castor oil seeds, which contains the deadly poison ricin. They performed blood transfusions with different blood types. They tested many different chemical agents on prisoners and had a building dedicated to gas experiments. They tested mustard gas, lewisite, cyanic acid gas, white phosphorus, andesite, and phosgene gas. There would even be frostbite testing, in which they'd take captives outside, dip various appendages into water of varying temperatures, and allowing the limb to completely freeze. Once it was frozen, they'd strike the affected limbs with a short stick. Ice was then chipped away, with the affected area being subjected to various treatments, such as being doused in water, exposed to the heat of fire, etc. One of the members described a scene in which a guard conducting these tests had two naked men put in an area 40 to 50 degrees below zero, and researchers filmed the whole process until the subjects died. The subjects suffered such agony that they were digging their nails into each other's flesh. Unit members also orchestrated forced sex acts onto the prisoners. They would get a prisoner that was infected with syphilis and force them to have sex with a prisoner that was not infected with syphilis. And they would do this so many times to spread the disease throughout the prisoners in order to vivisect the members who had the disease at certain stages to see how it affected the body. So yeah, it's pretty fucked up. It's pretty morbid, which is why I definitely felt like I needed to put a warning before this. And not only was it that they forced members, I believe it was, they started with a woman that had syphilis, and then they forced her to have sex with somebody who didn't have syphilis, and then continued to spread it that way. And I think it might have been more than just one woman, but pretty much the guards would continuously blame this spread on the women, despite the fact that they were forcing them to have sex and spread the disease. So really, it's not their fucking fault. So yeah, no, it's the other thing about it that I find really interesting is that the official story that they used as the cover up was that it was a lumber mill. It is estimated that Unit 731 tested on 250,000 people. So 250,000 people, which, unless I put it into perspective of 250,000, it probably doesn't sound like that much, but also that's a lot of fucking people. Keep in mind the number of MIA soldiers is 75,000 people. Hirohito war crime involvement pretty much is about the fact that Emperor Hirohito, who was the emperor of Japan during the Second World War, was not tried for any war crimes like, any of the Axis members were. Now, the reason why Hirohito wasn't tried for any war crimes is a pretty heavily debated topic amongst historians. And the reasons can vary from the fact that, well, when the second nuke was dropped on Japan, Japanese weren't really wanting to give up. They didn't want to surrender to America. That's the reason why we had to drop a second nuke to begin with, was because the first one was to say, hey, we've got weapons of mass destruction, you should probably surrender. And they didn't. So we were like, all right, here's the second one. Seriously, you should surrender. And a lot of the Japanese still were very stubborn and didn't want to, surrender. But Emperor Hirohito was like, hey guys, no, we should fucking surrender. This is going to keep happening and more of our civilians are going to die. And that's not a good thing. And sure enough, they listened to their fucking emperor. So yeah, that's one of the reasons. Some of the other reasons range from the fact that it was because Hirohito didn't actually really want to be involved in the war crimes to begin with, but he did so because he didn't want to be murked by his own fucking people. There's a lot of speculation as to why it is that he wasn't tried for any war crimes. There's no really specific way to tell. And the U.S. pretty much just said, like, yeah, he was a powerless figurehead. Like, he couldn't do much against his own people. Look, he was only following orders, okay? I mean, like, where have I heard that before? I absolutely love the title of this one. Who Snitched on Anne Frank? Honestly, like, this would be a huge mystery still, but actually, as of January of this year, we have an answer as to who it was that snitched on Anne Frank. His name... have to keep pulling back my phone for this one. His name was Arnold van der Berg, and he was a Jewish figure of Amsterdam, a pretty big figure in Amsterdam. And he probably gave up the Franks because he wanted to save his own family, which, no offense to Anne, she's dead. But I can't really blame the guy, You either save your family or you save somebody else's family. And 9 times out of 10, you're going to save your own family. Like, no, but it doesn't matter who you are. You're going to save your own family. Missing Heinrich Muller. This isn't to be confused with Heinrich Himmler, who did not go missing. Although he was appointed by Heinrich Himmler. And he was a high-ranking SS officer. So his disappearance is a little bit questionable as to why is it that he went Just poof. The last he was seen was with Hitler in the bunker after Hitler committed suicide. And his last words were, I know the... Oh, fuck, I want to have them exact. We know the Russian methods exactly. I haven't the faintest intention of being taken prisoner by the Russians. Well, one of the theories just so happens to be that he did end up getting captured by the Russians. So, I mean, maybe he did, maybe he didn't. Who knows? It's really heavily debated about where the fuck he just suddenly vanished to. According to one person in 2013, Muller's body was found in August of 1945 by a work crew cleaning up corpses and was one of the 3,000 buried in a mass grave on the site of a former Jewish cemetery in Berlin. While he was confident that it was Muller, it was never confirmed. So 77 years later, and honestly, it seems like nobody really knows where the fuck Muller went, and nobody can find his body. So yeah, he's missing. That's it. There's really not much to talk about in that one because, like I said, there's really not much information on Muller himself, other than, like I said, he was a high-ranking officer a high-ranking SS officer that was appointed by Heinrich Himmler, and he was last seen in the bunker with Adolf Hitler. So, where Adolf Hitler committed suicide. The Nanjing Massacre is really not much of a mystery or an obscurity. It's pretty well known. I mean, obviously it's not taught in American classes about World War II because we don't really want to talk about the rape of Nanjing because it's one of the worst atrocities committed by the Japanese. So, yeah, there's that. All right. So, let's get into a little history lesson, shall we? The rape of Nanjing started on December 6th of 1937 and lasted for 6 long weeks. And it included there's a lot here. It included mass rape, arson, a lot of killing, and this was all committed on Nanjing, which was the that was the capital of the Republic of China. Like I said, I'm sure a lot of people already know about the Nanjing Massacre. You've probably seen this picture before. And if you don't know anything about it, there's a little tiny description to go under the picture. Anyways, yeah, it is named as one of the worst atrocities committed by the Japanese during World War II. And yeah, it's pretty fucking bad. Germans fled to Antarctica is kind of the same. It's kind of like in the same vein as Germans fled to Argentina, except where Germans fled to Argentina because they were accepted there, Germans fled to Antarctica because literally nobody cares. Who the fuck is the owner of Antarctica? Nobody. But also because of the fact that they had a reason to go up there. And that is something that I don't want to talk about just yet because it actually makes a reappearance later on down the line in a deeper part of the iceberg. So for now, we're just going to say they fled to Antarctica. At least that's a conspiracy theory that they did. Moving on, the disappearance of Flight 19. Now, if you've ever watched Close Encounters of the Third Kind, you might have actually heard of Flight 19, the disappearance of Flight 19. Essentially, 5 bomber pilots went missing over the Bermuda Triangle during a flight training exercise from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, my favorite place, Florida. And a lot of people obviously speculate that the reason that these 5 pilots went missing was because they went over the Bermuda Triangle, and you know where that goes? Aliens. So if you've ever watched the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind, you'd actually know that they do make an appearance in it because I believe it's like the first person, like the beginning of the movie, like it's something. I've never seen the fucking movie, okay? It's from 1977. Why would I watch an old film, okay? A lot of conspiracy theories are that these 5 pilots went missing because they were abducted by aliens. And really, I mean, like the interesting thing is that you know, they've never found any of the parts of any of the 5 planes that have gone missing. It has been suspected here and there that, okay, like, you know, some of them have, or a lot of people have found parts to planes that they believe are part of the Flight 19 group, but obviously they really weren't. So what happened to all of these flights, and why is it no matter how many times people go back and forth and triangulate the area where they might have disappeared, they can't find anything? Nobody knows. It's kind of the same thing as Amelia Earhart. It might be aliens. Who fucking knows? I don't know. Moving on. Hans Kammler disappearance. Look, there's so many fucking people who have disappeared. Like, you had the 75,000 Americans that just went MIA. You had Heinrich Himmler, or Himmler. So I don't know if I get Himmler. And now we've got Hans Kammler disappearing. So yeah, I'm starting to see a bit of a trend here, but I think this is the last disappearance. I have my phone here so I can say this specific word and try to get the pronunciation right, but I don't think I will. Hans Kammler was an SS Obergruppenführer. I love that. I love trying to say that. I probably really butchered that, and I don't apologize to the Germans because that's some fucking Nazi shit. Who cares? He was responsible for the Nazi civil engineering programs, so you can already see why his disappearance might be a little bit interesting to people. Not only was he responsible for the civil engineering program of the SS, he was also responsible for the development of the V2 rocket, which, if you don't know anything about the V2 rocket, I will try to explain kind of. The V2 rocket back in the 1940s was the world's first long-range guided ballistic missile. Not only was he responsible for the V2 rocket, which was really impressive, he was also responsible for a lot of bomber planes, which the design looks really cool. I'm gonna be honest. Like, the Nazis might be terrible people, but they created some really fucking cool stuff. I might want to cut that out. Between April and May of 1945, Hans Kammler was making some very sketchy and contradictory movements throughout the months, up until his eventual disappearance. On July 9th of 1945, his wife had actually petitioned to have him declared dead. Kurt Pruick, I don't know how to pronounce that, Kammler's driver, stated that he had actually seen Kammler's corpse, and that he had been at his burial or his funeral, and that his death had to have been around May 10th of 1945 or so. Despite this, nobody has actually seen, nobody's actually found Hans Kammler's body within the last 77 years, or like his remains or anything. It really does make you wonder whether or not the driver actually did see his corpse at his funeral, or if maybe somebody was pretending to be dead and his driver was in on it. You never know. Not to mention the fact that his wife petitioned for him to be dead as early as July, when the search started in May. The 6-hour war, which I'm pretty sure a lot of people have heard about, the 6-hour war. It's definitely something you've definitely heard about within the history books, and definitely something you've probably been taught about within world history. Despite its name, the 6-hour war actually lasted between the 9th of April and the 10th of June of 1940. Between this time was when the Germans, or the Nazis, decided that it was a good idea to invade Denmark, despite the fact that I believe it was a year prior they had actually signed a peace treaty between, or a non-aggression pact between the two countries. Obviously, Hitler was like, well, you know, non-aggression, more like full aggression. I'm gonna go ahead and just fucking straight up invade Denmark. And because Denmark wasn't prepared for it, because, well, they had a non-aggression pact, and Hitler just kind of came out of nowhere and said, hey, I'm gonna fucking invade you, without actually even saying he's gonna do so. Yeah, they weren't prepared. They were They were way inferior in terms of men, power, really just the ability to fight. So it took 2 hours before Denmark was like, all right, okay, we get it. All right, you're good. We're done. And I mean, obviously it took some time before anybody else within the military of Denmark had heard about this. So it took another 2 hours before the fight had actually ended. So in total, it took about 4 hours, maybe more before it was really over. You can't really blame the Danish prime minister because, well, the Germans were bombing the fuck out of a bunch of like cities and shit. So, of course, the prime minister of Denmark was like, well, I don't want Copenhagen to get bombed. So, all right, I surrender. You can have Denmark. The Mukden, I'm not really sure how to pronounce it. The mukbang, I shouldn't make jokes. The Mukden Incident is yet again another incident that was perpetrated by the Japanese. Now, I want to make the joke that the person who created this iceberg is clearly very against the Japanese, but also these are obscurities because you don't learn about them in history class, because to be 100% honest, when you're in history class and it's World War II time, all you hear is Germany bad, Nazis bad, Nazis bad, Nazis bad. The Nazis did really bad things. Oh, Japan did Pearl Harbor, but the Nazis are really bad. So, yeah, I mean, the US and Japan both kind of sweep a lot of these under the rugs. But let's get into what the Mukden Incident was. The Mukden Incident was an invasion perpetrated by the Japanese on, you guessed it, the Chinese. Really, Japan loved fucking with the Chinese. On September 18th of 1931, Lieutenant Sumori Kawamoto of the Independent Garrison Unit of the 29th Japanese Infantry Regiment detonated a small explosive on a railroad track. It didn't really do any fucking damage to the railroad track or the train that was passing by. However, this did not stop the government this didn't stop the Japanese government from going, hey, you tried to blow up that fucking train, didn't you? It was you, China, wasn't it? Well, we're going to go ahead and invade. We're going to go ahead and invade you fuckers. And that's what they did. They attacked their own fucking train and blamed it on the Chinese so that way they could invade Mukden. So, yeah. If you thought US was pretty bad about doing that, they're not alone. However, the Japanese army immediately blamed the Chinese dissidents, and within mere moments, it had a full-on invasion of Mukden, China, which led to the occupation of Manchuria, in which Japan established it as its puppet state. I like that I wrote it this way. The gaslighting and deception was exposed in 1932, and it forced Japan to diplomatic isolation and its later withdrawal from the League of Nations in 1933. The Japanese were actually pretty interested in Manchuria since the end of the Russo-Japanese War, which ended in 1905. So, moving on, we have the final part of Tier 1, which is honestly the worst way to end Tier 1. The Swastika Hijacked. Now, this might sound really fucking interesting. The Swastika Hijacked. Oh my god. Who hijacked the swastika? What? The Nazis hijacked the swastika from Buddhism. The swastika, which I don't remember what its actual name is at the moment, was actually used to symbolize the footprints of Buddha himself. For whatever reason, Hitler went, I like that. I'm just gonna tilt it a little. All right, that's the swastika. Anyways, that is it for Tier 1. We're gonna go ahead and get into Tier 2, not today, and probably not for a bit because I don't have that much free time nowadays, but I'm going to try my best to do all of Tier 2 as soon as I can and get it put out sometime after this video. I really do want to keep on doing this entire iceberg. I want to try to do all of it. I don't know how well I can dedicate myself to this, but depending on how well this first video does, I might be a little bit more motivated to continue the series and do it as much as I can. But I still really want to do it nonetheless. But that is it for this video. Thank you for watching. If you actually watched it, and if you've actually stuck around until the end, I want to give you a big shout out and a big kiss and a big thank you so much. This is something that I've wanted to do for a while, but I haven't really found a topic that I want to do it with. This one was a little bit of it was a little hard to convince myself to want to do. But like I said, I'm really interested in World War II and a lot of the mysteries and obscurities that surround it. So this just felt right for me to do. And like I said, it doesn't really fit the normal theme of my channel. So a lot of the rest of the videos are going to be uploaded on my second channel, in which I will have in the description and in the comment section. And also there will probably be a card. I'm not sure which way. And yeah, again, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next part, the next tier.